All right. Hey, welcome everyone. It's 6 o'clock and we'll start our council meeting for the 22nd of April. And, first of all, I want to acknowledge the Whadjuk people as the traditional owners of the greater Fremantle-Wallyope area. And we recognize that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important today. I also acknowledge that we meet here today on land that was never ceded, and I wholeheartedly support the many campaigns for truth-telling, justice, and reconciliation, both here and across this country. Now, for anyone who may have not attended a council meeting before, just to let you know, this meeting is being recorded and streamed live online, and while all care is taken to maintain privacy, visitors in the public gallery and members of the public submitting a question, you may be captured in the recording. So, just so you're aware of that. On to attendance, apologies, and leaves of absence. We have an approved leave of absence for Councillor Jeff Graham. Are there any other applications or leaves of absence from elected members? No? Great. Moving on, disclosures of interest by members. Are there any? No? Seeing none. Responses to previous public questions taken on notice. So the agenda contains the responses for the questions that were taken on notice at our last meeting on the 8th of April. And so for everyone, if you're interested in that, please have a look. And now we're on to public question time. And public question time is where members of the public can speak for up to 3 minutes. At that time, there'll be a little alarm that sounds, and we just ask if you haven't wrapped up your comments that you do so by then. I understand we have a petition as well. That can come, people can speak to the petition later on in the agenda, or you can speak now during public question time. But are there any other members of the public that wish to speak? No? Okay. Do you want to hold off till we get to the petition? Wonderful. Thank you. Great. Which is next. So I understand we have a petition and we have Rachel Glidden and John Turner here to speak about that.
Thanks very much for having me. I'm a member of a really lovely community dog group in North Fremantle, and we've lodged this petition because essentially within the group we've got older people, younger people, people with kids, people without kids, and we understand that both the two local parks that we live close to and also the dog policy of Fremantle is currently under review, so we thought it'd be a good time to kind of, I suppose, put forward some of our ideas. Essentially, one of the problems in North Fremantle is meeting with dogs on lead is quite challenging, especially when you've got puppies that want to interact, because the leads get tangled, you end up falling over, and it can be quite challenging, even when you have to release them to try and untangle the leads. And the only place we currently have as an option is the oval, which is fantastic, but it's often being used by sporting teams and whatnot, so it does really limit the amount of time that you can meet and the timings and options for that. A lot of other suburbs will have dedicated fenced areas for dogs so that people who don't want to be close to the dogs don't go in there, and people who do want to have the dogs off lead can be in there. But we don't currently have that in North Fremantle. And it occurred to us that the two parks, both quite close together, one on Thompson Road and one on Herbert Street, are kind of being proposed for a very similar usage, and one is almost already completely fenced. So it would be a very low cost to the council to fence off one of the parks, and then we could use it as a dog off-lead area, and then more money could be spent focusing on the other park for children or people who don't want to be hanging around close to dogs off-lead. The other thing I think that we wanted to say is that in the dog policy, the proposal is for an off-lead site up near the cliffs, near the boundary with Mosman Park, which is pending environmental approvals, but that would be quite an unsafe site for some of our dogs, close to the cliff, close to a road, without any fencing at all, and often used by other people who might not want to be too close to dogs off lead as well, runners, bikes, etc. So from our point of view, a dedicated fenced area would be better. And it doesn't really make such sense to have duplication of sort of really younger children focused things so close together from our perspective. Thanks for your time.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. John, did you wish to speak to the petition as well?
My main reason for being here was in case Rachel had to, we didn't know how the timings work, she's got to go somewhere. I've been lucky enough to raise my kids, and I'm in Thompson Road, and we've had the two parks, I think McCabe behind me and the Bolo Park, Deadman, and I'll just repeat the duplication idea. At the moment the plan is, I believe, to have dogs on lead and playgrounds in both of them. The higher one, the Herbert one, is about 95% fenced in already. It would just need a couple of fairly simple sort of swimming pool entrance gates to secure it. And if you didn't put a playground there, I'd imagine that the money which is saved on that could be spent on making a really good playground down on, so I get my names wrong, the Deadman one. And I think that really integrates quite well with the reactivation of the Bowls Club. And there's already the skate park there. And as dog owners, the last thing we want is to have our dogs near kids. And when the Bolo's got sort of hot dogs and picnics down there, we don't want to sort of interfere with that, but it's very hard to explain that to a dog. And rather than having two identikit parks, almost, I think I've pasted out they're about 30 metres apart. Why not have a doggy one and a non-doggy one? That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And was there an elected member that was going to receive the petition? Councillor Clark, did you wish to say any words about this?
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for this initiative. It's a great idea. I really love it. I think it's great. There is children's play equipment in that park for small children, and I think that that also adds for people who have both dog and child. So I think it's a really good idea. So thanks for going to the trouble to do this. I know there's a number of community members. I was spoken to by a number of people the other week about this at Easter. So thanks for pulling it together, and the city will certainly have a look at it. Perfect timing. Enjoy the comedy show.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, John. Normally, when we receive petitions, staff will respond to those petitions. Because we're in the middle of consultation on the dog policy and the dog law right now, we'll receive that as part of the community comments on that, and that'll form part of the discussion when that comes back to us. So you'll keep an eye on that. That'll be the next couple months or so. Great, so perfect timing. Thank you. Wonderful. No other petitions. Great. No deputations. I'm not aware of any presentations. So we're on to the confirmation of minutes. Can I ask someone to move and second the minutes? Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded Councillor Slaughter. All those in favor? That's unanimous and carried. Thank you. On to elected member communication. Is there any elected member communication? Councillor Moughlin.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to take the time to celebrate an achievement of the city, which may have gone unrecognised over the last week. So on the 15th of April, the Office of the Auditor General tabled its financial audit results for all local governments for last financial year in State Parliament, and that included the financial results of 147 local governments across Western Australia. And as part of that report, the Office of Auditor General identifies best practice entities, and the City of Fremantle was identified as being part of the top 10 in the band 1 and 2 local governments. And the criteria that those entities are measured on relate to timeliness of CEO's certified financial reports, the quality of financial reports, including the number of errors identified, the quality of the working papers that support the financial report, management resolution of accounting matters, key staff availability during the audit, number and significance of management letter findings, and clear opinion with no audit report modifications. The Office of the Auditor General congratulated those entities or those councils that made it onto that list. And I think it's significant recognition for the city and staff. Our finance team work really hard to ensure that we are on top of our financial matters and ensuring that we have a good relationship with our auditors and ensuring that the data is readily available and we have those relationships and conversations and closeout of those matters is significant, and to be recognised in this manner and be on the good list rather than the bad list is something that should be celebrated by the city.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Moughlin. Councillor Van Dorsen.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention at tonight's meeting what a great event the Girls' Festival of Community Football was on the weekend. I just thought that was worth celebrating publicly. I think it was such a fabulous event with I have to try and remember the numbers, but there was 850 girls participating, and then a significant increase year on year in the 4 years it's been going. And yeah, so over, I think, 100 teams or something registered, and the competition, anyway, it was incredible day and so well organised. Yeah, it's just, I wish I had the statistics in front of me, because it's very impressive, the growth of girls football for females in WA. I think we're leading the way in terms of increase in registrations and participation. And yeah, such a wonderful event. Thank you, everyone. Councillor Moughlin and former Councillor Archibald, very much involved. Yeah, no, it was an absolute pleasure, and something, yeah, supported by the City of Fremantle, which is wonderful, and of course Freo City Football Club, as well as Perth Glory, and a very long list of supporters and sponsors of the event. And yeah, hope to see it continue and grow every year. It's great for our city. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Van Dorsen. It was, instead of controlled chaos, it was more like a well-oiled machine that day. And thanks to everyone for their help. Councillor Williamson-Wong.
Thanks. I was going to echo the celebrations for the Freo community. Let me get it. The Fremantle Festival of Community Girls Football, and all of the fact that all of the elected members are there, and a special thanks to Councillor Moughlin. I know you were there from 5:30 in the morning helping prepare for the day, so you definitely put in the hard yards, and great to see. The other event that I would like to celebrate and echo is one that Councillor Sullivan and I both attended, which was the Woolstores End of the Ledge party that happened last weekend, which was supported by the City of Fremantle, Red Bull, amongst others. It was really great to see the Ledge in action. There were over 200 people there, and many. Yeah, it was nice in comparison to the last event that was at Woolstores. A lot more locals being able to skate the Ledge for one final time, have a big party. There was a DJ, and yeah, it was good to see Red Bull out there again. And I guess a reminder that now it's our job to make sure that the skaters get to stay in that precinct, hopefully into the future, or have at least a seat at the table of how we design that precinct and what that looks like. They've been there for a long time, so I look forward to keeping them along Cantonment Street.
Is there any other elected member communication? Then I'll just briefly mention that the city was the recipient of a grant from Lottery West. It was $282,000 to help out Victoria Hall. That was given to us yesterday, and the good work of the staff is what delivered that. It's going to result in increased rigging and lighting and sound. So like one-off events can easily bump in and out of the hall, so it'll get a lot more community use, and it's really exciting. So congratulations to the staff for getting that done. All right, and seeing no more elected member communication, we'll go on to planning reports and recommendations, which there are none. And right into the meat of the meeting, general reports. So the first item up is the Community Safety and Crime Prevention Plan. It's item 15, and I'll just note there are some proposed amendments for this item as well, but if we could get someone to move and second the item. Moved by Councillor Moughlin, seconded by Councillor Williamson-Wong. Great. Any debate?
No one's talking. I'm happy to say something. I think this is fantastic. I just want to at least thank the officers for preparing the report and this and the, I'll get the name right as well, Community Safety Crime Prevention Plan. Yeah, just think excellent work, and I'm really proud of us as a council for progressing this work. Yeah, I don't have anything much to say on it though. I'm happy to support the officers' recommendation and consider the amendments if anyone wants to move them.
Well, I'll start speaking and then I'll just come back with questions, as is my usual way at the moment. I am excited to see this come back, but I don't think that we're at the point of being able to go out for community consultation at this point. And I'm going to explain my reasoning, but I guess at a high level, for the same reasons that I felt we weren't ready to endorse the Douro Road roundabout plan. I don't think it is good form for us to put a document or a plan out for consultation, for final consultation, when we ourselves expect there to be somewhat significant changes, not necessarily in the form of the document or the areas, but with this community safety crime prevention plan, it is also an action plan. And if elected members do think that there are semi-significant changes to be made, I don't think it's necessarily I guess, the best way to do consultation for us to go out, seek comments, which we may expect and we may not expect, and then have to perhaps re-advertise something. I guess from my perspective, this point is the kind of final tweaks that we should be making for a plan, and it doesn't feel like this is there. And the reasons that I am saying that and hesitant to endorse it is because of how important this plan is to Fremantle. The number one thing that I hear about is that people are feeling increasingly unsafe in our city. And we know that it's incredibly linked to what we'll talk about in our next plan, being homelessness, the housing crisis. We know that there's an increase of drug use in Fremantle. And that means that if we're endorsing a plan until 2031, we need to make sure that it's actually hitting the mark. And I'm not convinced that this one does yet. One of the great phrases in the plan is that feeling safe in public places is essential to well-being and participating in community life. And we also know that Freo has a problem with loneliness and with feeling like they don't belong. It's one of the key pillars of the next plan we'll discuss. And people are feeling increasingly unsafe in our city. I also think it's important to acknowledge that people who might be experiencing homelessness are probably also not feeling safe in our city. It's not something that is, only people with homes experience. But I thought that there were some great things in this policy which I was really excited to see, including the implementation of women's focused safety education initiatives to improve personal safety awareness, although I also hope that that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not trying to teach men that they shouldn't be violent towards women in public. I mean, self-defense classes can only go so far. But otherwise, I thought it was really good to see that we are committing to investigate initiatives to increase the sense of safety for women and vulnerable groups in our community when exiting venues late at night. And that was a theme that came throughout, was how we deal with the fact that we are an entertainment city and a precinct and people feel unsafe around alcohol and drugs. And there was a lot of mention of the Fremantle Liquor Accord, and I think it was a good example for me about how the plan isn't fully baked yet. I mean, I've never heard of the Fremantle Liquor Accord before, and whether or not that's because I'm just not listening for it, I do think that there's work to be done to explain some of the work that's gone on, and also how does the Fremantle Liquor Accord help support some of these things. Some of the other factors which I feel need to be, I guess, addressed include lighting, which I know other elected members will talk about. It's pulled out as a key issue, but it's not necessarily substantiated in the action. And also there was a small one in the kind of reinstating the Donate Without a Doubt initiative, and I guess the sense of that being in this action plan makes it feel like some things have just been dragged over from the last action plan without much thought. The Donate Without a Doubt initiative to me doesn't feel like something that's necessarily worthwhile anymore. And I think for me, there just seems to be, a great explanation of the community engagement, an understanding of the current state and situation in Fremantle, but not necessarily a translation into the action plan. And I, for those reasons, would be quite happy if, after debate and fleshing out how other elected members feel, whether or not we defer this in time for us to have a workshop to discuss it, because we need to get this one right. And I think that we should get it right before it goes out for final consultation and then allow further tweaks to be made following that.
Great. I'll just add that I agree that I think that this probably could use a little more time and possibly a deferral for us to do a little bit more work. There is a lot of really good stuff in there, and staff have done an excellent job with putting all this together. But considering that this plan is providing direction on priority works to be scoped and assessed, it does a lot of considering, a lot of exploring, a lot of assessing, and a lot of investigating on the action items. And personally, I'd like to see just a little more doing, especially on some of the key items that were raised through the community consultation that Councillor Williamson Wong made. So if there was a deferral for this item moved, I would be inclined to support it at this point in time. Just thought I would flag that for everyone. Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, thanks. And I won't try and reiterate all of what Councillor Williamson Wong just said, but I do note that there are a number of different suggested amendments, and they approach the matter quite differently. And I just thought it would be useful to sort of talk about whether or not now is the moment to change specific wording in a document, or now is the time to suggest maybe it needs some strengthening in this area, maybe we need more information on that, etc. In other words, a bit of a shopping list for what the conversation over the next month or so should be. I kind of approached it as the latter. I don't think we have to get the document 100% right, and there is a part of me that actually thinks that a document like this probably should go out in the version that the staff have produced, because they're the professionals in that area, but it also should go out with a sense of what does the elected body think of it in its current form, pluses and minuses, in terms of strategy, in terms of priorities, in terms of weaknesses, strengths, those sort of things. Because community look to us to lead. They don't just look to us to do what they say through a consultation process. They actually look to us to lead. And that includes speaking to the community about the issues that are coming up that we know are relevant and the like. So our input into the consultation process has to include us saying what we think about at the document. So I actually think going forward, we actually should be saying, we endorse the document to go out, and here's a bit of a shopping list of what we think, because the community might agree with that, or they might wholeheartedly disagree with that and say, no, the staff have got it 100% right, and get off your high horse, council, kind of thing, which is fine. So there are a number of areas. It's worth saying that the document is critically important. It does bring together a lot of things that we do as a local government, and a lot of challenges that we deal with on an everyday basis. Certainly dealing with ratepayers, particularly inner city residents, and I particularly think of the people who are in the Little Lane development, who I met in the foyer last year, and about 30 people were in that little tiny foyer expressing their concerns about crime and safety in the city. So it does strike me, we're dealing with the health and well-being thing, and we're also dealing with crime and safety. They're kind of overlap. But in terms of the health and well-being, we'll come to that one next. In terms of crime and safety, I absolutely agree that we need to strengthen the prioritisation of street lighting, but I also think that we need to have more sort of demonstrated efficacy in the way in which CCTV is used, for example, and the way it's used to improve compliance, intervention, enforcement, generally speaking, in the city. but also in dealing with things like, the bike theft, which we know is a massive thing in our city, but also just general, low-level antisocial behaviour, because that is, I said it the other day, it's a horrible thing if someone is savagely beaten or murdered in your city, but very few people ever see that. It happens kind of in times and places where nobody's actually around. What people see in our city is the everyday stuff that scares them, and sometimes it's not even. It's certainly sometimes not a crime. It's just antisocial, but it's just behavioural. And the WA Police's job is not really to nursemaid community in terms of behavioural matters, but our job is to try and make a city feel safe and inviting to everybody, not just whoever wants to take over a space at any given time. And that's the area that I think that we need to do more work in. And the only way we're going to do that is to look at the structures that we currently use, whether it's being CCTV cameras, whether it's community safety officers, whether it's Noongar Patrol, whether it's any, all of those sort of things. And to what degree are they actually producing results? Because at the end of the day, we put a lot of effort into this, but our most important job is to assess whether we're producing results and whether we need to redirect energies and resources into other areas or into those areas that actually need more resources. I'm not sure we're getting to that resolution just at the moment in this plan, and that's why there were certainly a number of things that I wanted to see either more evidence or more emphasis put on, and I'm sure collectively we'd have quite a long shopping list in that regard. So the issue is really, how do we have that conversation? How do we have that with the community, and how do we bring it forward in a prioritisation sense, in a budgeting sense, and in a workable program for the city to implement?
Great, thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Clark?
Thank you. Yeah, this is, it's good work, and our guys do a lot of good work on the ground, and I thank them for that, because I think they've got one of the hardest jobs in the city. But we want to get it right as we step forward, not only for our residents, for them as well, but especially for our residents and people living here and who are visiting as well. There is a strong intersection between this policy and the health and wellbeing policy, which completely makes sense. And when you look at, if you spoke to people in the street and said, what are your main concerns about Fremantle, they'd probably only have one or two big main concerns, this being the first, and everything else would just be a possibility for improvement, if you really looked at what's actually a problem. So being that this is probably our biggest problem, we need to get it really, really right. The councillors are having the conversations with the residents, and it's different in all areas. I've had conversations just on Sunday with a resident from Little Lane who spotted me in the street, and of course in North Freo, and who are facing challenges that they haven't faced before, or in the numbers that they've faced before, and it's really unfair to our community to have to deal with some of the things that they're dealing with at the moment. So Councillor Van Dawson and I are working on that really hard to try and bring that to a head to make things right again. But obviously we need to bring to the fore and strengthen what we can within our own policy and give our officers and staff all the tools that they need to get the job done and to have the biggest impact. And as Councillor Sullivan just said, are we funding the right things? Are we funding enough of the right things? And that's looking at where the problems are, the effect that we're getting from what we're funding, and then also looking at things like lighting and bike theft, which are two big ones in our city. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Mufflin.
Thank you. I suppose I generally think most of the content for this plan is in place, but picking up on the commentary, from other elected members and looking at the actions that are included, we've got 34 actions which are included as part of this plan, and maybe for me, what's missing from the plan itself is that there is no indication to our community, nor equally to council officers, as to what we think is the most important area and the one that needs most attention. So when this, say if we did send this out to community and it came back and then it's endorsed, what's the guidance for our officers to then go and say, oh, I'm going to pick off 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I'm leaving 6 to 34. But maybe, action number 33 is the one that we think as elected members is the most important. So for me, I would like for us to be able to maybe, rather than the way in which we've themed it at the moment around the 3 focus areas, as how we consider the action items, but the prioritisation rather than those themes. Absolutely put them in the themes so we understand what the work is that's required, but what's at the top of the list that's going to have the greatest impact, and if you like, our ability to have the greatest influence, and what we can do to make a change for both perception and actual impacts of crime for people in Fremantle.
And I believe you moved the item, Councillor Mufflin, so I'm just going to take that as your opening statement. Is that? Yep, perfect. Councillor Slaughter.
Thanks. I like this plan as a start, and I think it does certainly outline that it's not a standalone document and that it will have overlap with other things. But as Councillor Mufflin pointed out, there are 34 actions. Only 4 of them don't commence in the first year. So that's 30 actions, and none of them are necessarily number one thing that you do off the bat. So I agree with your statement there, Councillor Mufflin, about the priorities not being particularly evident to the community going forward with this plan. One of the big statements in the plan is the focus area to outreach and patrols. And I think our community would really like to see prevention and enforcement, which is what outreach and patrols is trying to convey. But the more we can prevent crime and increase community safety, the better. And the community really wants to know what we're doing on enforcement. And that doesn't come through strongly in this plan, I feel. So we can say we're going to do all of these things, but how are we going to back them up is going to be really important for the community to understand from this plan. And I don't see that in the plan, so I'm not sure where they would see it either. It does require a collaborative approach. And so even though there are 34 actions, I know that we won't be alone on them, and we will have lots of other agencies and partnerships that we will need to build and develop and maintain throughout the life of the plan. And so I would also prefer to see a bit more detail behind that before we endorse it.
Thank you, Councillor Slaughter. And Councillor Williamson-Wong with a question or two.
Question. I think the point raised by Councillor Slaughter is, and other elected members, is a good one, in that we know that our community are looking for, I guess, enforcement, and there was some line in the community engagement about stronger policing, whether and I guess the question I have around that is, because we know that this plan is going to require a lot of collaboration with WA Police, because our community safety officers don't have the powers to get involved, and that is where a significant portion, I think, of the frustration towards the city comes from, because people see community safety officers as people who will get involved when we're managing their own risk and they're not going to get involved and we're relying on WA Police. How do we think the relationship between the City of Fremantle safety officers and WA Police will change after this plan, assuming that it picks up on the fact that the relationship at the moment, I would say, is perhaps not producing the results that we are hoping for, such as seeing more police on patrols throughout the city and having a kind of visible presence, or other aspects. And is that something that I've missed as being kind of a clear action of the plan?
I'll turn that over to the director to answer.
Thank you, Mayor. Terrific question. I think at a working level, we have a extremely good working relationship between ComSafety and the police. There's thousands of interactions happen a month where a lot of good work is done. But I think to the core of your point, is it actually achieving what it is you want to see happen in the city? And to Councillor Sullivan's point as well, is it delivering what it is you want? I think are really fine questions. There are limitations about the role of ComSafety officers, so I think there's certainly work to be done there. And of course, they are on the front line and they're getting caught between two very conflicting positions of Fremantle has a big heart and we care about our people. We're also getting a lot of feedback saying we're a little bit sick and tired of how the city is presented. And I think deferring to a workshop where we can unpack that a bit and get some consensus across elected members would be really great, because we don't quite know where to go. Every phone call we lean one way, we lean the other way, and I think to get some clarity around how hard do you want to go on some of those things would be terrific. Did I answer the question, Councillor? Partly.
Thank you. Councillor Kamara.
Yeah, look, this is a really interesting and very important conversation. Obviously, it's one that we as elected members is brought to us by the community time and time again. You know, people, we want our city to be inviting. We want to feel safe. When our city feels safe, that's when people will want to live in the city and visit the city. And we know Fremantle is an absolutely fantastic and unique spot in the world. But we also know that unless we get on top of some of these issues that have been identified, it's not going, it's not going to be the place that we would, like to be living in going forward, and obviously for our children to live in. So many of the issues that have been highlighted by my fellow councillors that need to be implemented to ensure that that this piece of work will result in actually having an impact. I think that's what's most important. We need to have an impact at the end of all this. I think it's a great report. As I read it, I thought it covers most aspects. But after listening to my fellow councillors, I think that we do need more time, and that's been reinforced by the manager. And until we're comfortable with these specifics, I think that we probably should push for a deferral, and I'm willing to move that if that's where we need to go. So,
is there a seconder for a deferral? Councillor Slaughter. All right, so we're now in a procedural motion. So you can speak to the deferral, Councillor Kamara, and Councillor Slaughter can speak to the deferral, and then we'll put it up for a vote.
Yeah, I think I've covered most of the reason why I've moved to the deferral at this point. I think we've heard enough from other councillors. Councillor Mofflin pointed out the 34 aspects that need to be considered and obviously prioritised at some point. And I think giving us more time to do that is really important. And I think the vibe in the room is pretty much the same. So, yeah, I'm happy to leave it at that.
Great. And I'll just check to make sure that yourself and Councillor Slaughter are okay with the words that are on the screen as reasons for deferral.
I am. I'm very happy to take over this motion that was originally put forward by Councillor Williamson Wong.
It was flagged by Councillor Williamson Wong, most definitely. Are you comfortable, Councillor Kamara?
Yes,
Okay,
I'm
great. Did you wish to speak to the deferral, Councillor Slaughter?
I'd just like to pick up on the fact that a workshop to consider further amendments be just noted that yeah, we do need to do some work, and we've identified some of those gaps tonight that we want to work on.
Great, thank you. So we'll put the deferral up for a vote. All those in favor of the deferral? And that's carried unanimously. Wonderful, thank you, everyone. On to the next item. It's item 16, the Community Health and Wellbeing Plan, the Public Health Plan. And I'll note that there's several amendments for this one as well. But can I ask for someone to move the item and second it? Moved by Councillor Moughlin, seconded by Councillor Williamson Wong. Did you wish to start a debate, Councillor Moughlin, or discussion?
I'll hold until later, thank you.
Look, I'll get my comments out of the way now. This is another item. When I went through all the amendments and looked at all the different things being considered, there was a total of 12 different things that were being considered by different elected members as amendments. That seems like a lot to me. I'm more than happy for us to go and have that debate here tonight, but personally, I think if it's the mood of the room, this might be another item that might benefit from a deferral, but I'll just leave my comments at that. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, and I don't disagree with that point, but I think it's also worth community understanding where we're heading if we do go for a deferral. And again, I think we've all recognised the importance of this plan. We've all recognised the great work that staff have already done in putting it together. I mean, these things are never brand new, of course. They're accumulation of a lot of years of experience and a lot of practice out there in the real world doing things on a daily basis. So the plan is a refresh of much of the good work that the city we know have been doing for decades. But there are things which change in our society, and we need to keep abreast of those. And so some of the ones for me that I felt either I didn't see in the health plan being strongly enough brought forward or not there at all. Some of the ones that people have certainly spoken to me about over the last few years are dealing with smoking and vaping in public places, particularly vaping because of the lack of kind of legislation around whether it constitutes smoking in the same way that the smoking laws do, and how it gets enforced. But there's also, I think there's probably, when we first started not allowing people to smoke in buildings and then stopping them smoking in al fresco areas, and then the kind of like, liquor licensing said, well, you can't smoke in a restaurant because that's got food in, but you can smoke in a pub, in an outside area, in a controlled space, and that, sometimes is also where people are eating, etc., etc. There's a lot of grey areas in that particular one, and the enforcement of it, therefore, is actually quite difficult, and I think to a degree has kind of got let go a little bit, and I think we need to understand what it is that we as a local government should be doing and what our expectations are on venues, hospitality venues, and in particular al fresco areas. Not an easy one to go through, but I think we need to do that. The issue of betting is one that I think has become a real plague in terms of health and well-being in Australia over the last decade. It does have significant impacts on people's mental health. and it certainly kind of it can end up being a gateway to a range of other issues that we deal with in society. And so I kind of like put it in the same bucket as smoking and alcohol in terms of its impact on society. And I think we need to reinforce the problems with it in the strategies that we have in our health and wellbeing plan. I'm also very concerned about making sure that the places that people get to utilise in our city are as good as we can get them. And so things like, 30 years ago, we put together a green plan. Now, the green plan was about connecting people to bushland areas and connecting them to places via green corridors and the like. And that is, for me, critically important. My mental health would be crap if I didn't get to go to the beach every morning and have a swim, or get to, be in environments on a regular basis. It wouldn't be great if there wasn't trees everywhere and the like. So, I know personally how important it is in terms of maintaining a healthy lifestyle, in terms of making sure the environment is available to our community. And I think we need to reinforce that in this plan. I know we're doing stuff, but if we don't reinforce those things, we don't prioritise them. And that's why we have these plans, is to try and, as with the last one, we need to try and work out what are the things that we should be doing that are actually going to help prioritise work that we do, which will have a positive impact for people's health and well-being. Bikes and pedestrianisation is obviously another one of those. And we do have bike plans and the like, but we know that, we still haven't, there are so many people who still haven't fully engaged walking and riding bikes because they don't feel safe, or the bike paths aren't good enough, or they're not continuous enough and the like. So those are the sort of things that I think this plan needs to improve on. The last one I would mention is, again, it's about, these are the proactive things that we can do to increase people's health and well-being. And things like community gardens and Verge care groups, to me, are the sort of things that we absolutely in local government have a real opportunity to improve people's well-being simply by getting behind those things and actually being incredibly proactive in making sure that we're setting them up, helping people in community set them up, get them going long enough that they actually perpetuate themselves. Because that perpetuating, it's really hard to get those things established, but once they're established, the benefit of them is absolutely significant. And the more, again, that we can use our resources focused on those things, then I think that we'll be achieving the sort of things that local government can do well. Sometimes we might focus a little bit too much on what everybody else is doing, get involved in everybody else's jobs, instead of just focusing on what is the thing that we can do really well in contributing to the overall. So I think, again, that conversation would be good to have.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Slaughter?
I just wanted to add that unlike the previous plan, the Community Safety and Crime Prevention Plan, this plan doesn't have any dates or timeline of how it might be affected. And so I think that's a gap there as well, because if this is a long-term plan from 26 to 31, what can the community expect when? Would be a really important thing to know for any community feedback, for them to be able to say, well, no, you've got your priorities wrong. We don't want you to continue to provide a safer Fremantle. We want you to continue to investigate sites and opportunities for crisis accommodation, for example, by reordering the various ideas that we've got listed in service delivery. So not only that, but with all of the very many other options that have been brought up as potential things that have been excluded. I'm just not ready to send this out for further consultation yet.
Thank you, Councillor Slaughter. So any other comments?
I'm happy
Councillor
to.
Williamson-Wong.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. I'm happy to speak. I was mostly happy with this. I think, again, as other elected members have said, it's an important plan for us, and it's really good to see that it's a continuation of work that's gone on before, as Councillor Sullivan was saying. I do think for me, I was a bit concerned that we didn't have time, or at least I haven't had time to look at the wellbeing profile that's linked in there. I don't think that's holding me back from endorsing it for advertising, but I do think that it's important that we consider the current profile as identified in the data that it tells us as our baseline, and if that's different to the community engagement and perceptions versus or otherwise. And I guess I did have some questions about the plan itself. There are a few actions that made me feel confused, which doesn't necessarily mean that they shouldn't be in there, but I was, confused about. Examples include the happy to chat benches and whether or not that's something that the city should be delivering. What does that look like? Who delivers that? Has it been done before? What actually is it as a service? Advocating for a new location of a farmer's market, I think, is good. I know that Mayor Lorva has an amendment up to advocate for it in specific other locations, but perhaps it's just advocating for more generally rather than identifying, rather than one specific location, 3 specific locations, for example, because I think there's probably many other places that are not necessarily the West End. I got off the train the other day and thought, well, how about that huge bloody car park that we have to all look at that's on the back of Coles, for example. And the talking to people about an aspiration of a late night cafe. I mean, sounds good. Where has it necessarily come from? Does it work in a place like Fremantle? Is there appetite for that? I mean, there's lots of questions that I had around the actions in there, but there was no doubt that the big theme in there was to minimise harm from alcohol, drugs, tobacco, and I think should probably be vaping. Again, a little bit of confusion around this idea of continuing to provide a safer Fremantle as a phrase that we were, I guess, supposed to be familiar with, and I'm not familiar with the idea of a safer Fremantle. It makes sense that it would be the accumulation of these actions, but if it's not referenced anywhere before, it feels slightly odd. Echoing my comments from before about the liquor accord. And I guess also for me, we know that there are, I think I can think of at least 2 kind of accreditation systems for late night venues that provide training to staff and kind of a cohort of these venues that you go and you know that it's an accredited, safer late night venue. So my question as well would be, why would we not be signing up to an initiative like that or using someone or a framework and a process that already exists that would be perfect to implement, I would imagine, in Fremantle, and then instead we're kind of coming up with our own actions that are probably not going, well, why would we reinvent the wheel, I guess. And I am just going to talk about my amendment, but I'm not going to move it yet, because I think one of the big things for me, I read the crime prevention plan, the community engagement, I read this plan and I read the engagement, and the other massive thing is that people feel unsafe because there's open drug use in Fremantle, and we know that to be true. We know that to have been an issue for a very long time. We also have a history of reacting to that with the safe needle, I don't know what the actual terminology is, deposit exchange. Thank you. And I do think that it's important for us to investigate and advocate for a supervised drug facility, supervised drug use facility. And the reasons for that is that, one, it responds to our community. We know that community is upset and feels unsafe because of open drug use, and we know it's a problem. And the response from staff was that, well, this state government is not happy at all to support something like this. Well, this state government might not be happy to support this, but we don't know who the state government is necessarily going to be made up of by the time it's 2031. And it shouldn't stop Fremantle, I think, investigating that, because it actually, to me, doesn't make sense that our state would be against it. Supervised drug use facilities are obviously providing public safety, drug user safety. They produce a reduction in deaths from overdose, and they also connect drug users to rehabilitation and support services. But one of the, I guess, the key financial outcomes is that there is a dramatic reduction in the strain on emergency services and responding to overdoses and overdose deaths. And it would be interesting to see the statistics. They would have them somewhere on how many overdoses are responded to in Fremantle, for example, the cost to the state, the people, etc. So for me, it feels like something that we need to have in a plan somewhere, so that in 2030, in 2031, there is still at least this idea that this would be something that may suit Fremantle. I'm not saying that we maybe are the most feasible place in WA for a facility to be built, but I do think we would be up there. You want these facilities to exist where drug use already happens, and we know that that's Fremantle. And for those reasons, I think it's really important that we address that in this plan. Whether or not, as Councillor Moughlin mentioned, we need to prioritise these actions. I'm not suggesting that this is priority number one on that list, because we know that the current state government doesn't have an appetite for it. But I do think it's important that it's listed on there, and I'm happy to, I'm happy for anyone to move that amendment, but it also feels like we're moving towards a deferral. But the governance question is, can I come back to it? Okay, great.
Yes, you may interject at any time and move an amendment or a procedural motion. Mhm. Any other comments on the item before us? Councillor Van Dorsen.
I'd like to move a deferral, just given the conversation. I share a lot of the sentiment tonight, and I just think, we just need a little bit more time to go through this before it goes out for advertising, and just...
Do we have a seconder for the deferral?
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Clark? No, that's okay. Continue.
Yes, I just move that deferral. I think based on discussion tonight, the number and nature of proposed amendments tonight, it's clear that, we'd benefit from a little bit more time to make sure we're happy with what goes out.
Did you wish to speak to the deferral, Councillor Clark?
Thank you. Only to say that I'm supporting this deferral because I feel that the safety plan and the health plan both sit very neatly together. They do have a significant influence one on the other. So I'd like to see them just both assessed together and make sure that they align with our strategy, and all the things that we're working on are prioritised as Councillor Moughlin suggested.
Great. Now we'll put the procedural motion to defer the item up for a vote. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Okay, on to the next. We now have item 17, which is update on the expression of interest for Shop 11 on South Terrace 7 to 9, otherwise known as the Old Meatball Bar. Is that correct? Wonderful. Can I ask for someone to move the item and second it? Moved by Councillor Moughlin, seconded by Councillor Kamada. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll put the item as before us up for a vote. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Now we're on to item 18, which is the new lease for the Fremantle Surf Life Saving Club. And I'll note there is a proposed amendment by Councillor Sullivan for this item. Can I ask for someone to move? Councillor Van Dorsen, and seconded by Councillor Slaughter. Great. Councillor Van Dorsen.
Thank you. Yes, happy to move this one. Thank you, officers, and it's great to see this up before us tonight. I support the officers' recommendation to extend the term, the proposed 21 years, as is. just based on it being, so this building was built for this purpose as a mini life-saving club at Port Beach, which is obviously needed there, and it is separate from, so it was, I'll just note, the proposed amendment to shorten the term of this lease to align with the main Surf Life Saving Club at Leighton. I don't agree with that. They're completely separate facilities. I just think, it's built for this purpose. Just give them the Life Saving Club the certainty and comfort to continue operating there, potentially invest as might be needed in what they're doing there. I just don't think it's necessary to align the club term, the terms of the lease with the main facility. They are quite separate, but yeah, that's all I had to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Van Dorsen. Any other discussion on the item? Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you. I might just jump straight into my proposed amendment, so I'll move that.
Do we have someone to second the proposed amendment? Councillor Williamson Wong. Okay.
Thank you.
We're speaking specifically to the amendment.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And I wasn't the only person that suggested this amendment, so it just turned out that it was my name that got put on it. So I don't want to be seen as the pariah and somehow not supporting the Fremantle Surf Life Saving Club, because I've been very supportive of them over the years, and the whole Leighton revitalisation certainly has been something that's been an incredible part of my life. The issue that I primarily have is not so much what it says in the reasons for the amendment, saying that maybe the two leases should align. That is a small part of it. The fundamental part of it is that, yes, that building was built for a particular purpose, that purpose needs to continue to occur going forward, and probably needs to be significantly upgraded at some stage as well. But the reality is we have a coastline that is incredibly unstable, and we know from all of the science and mapping that we've been doing and planning work that we've been doing, that the foreshore where this building is built is fundamentally unsustainable into the future. Now, I don't know, I haven't got the absolute crystal ball to know when that is going to be so problematic that it won't be workable, that piece of land. But I suspect it could well be within a 21-year period. I also know that, we're looking at the entire Port Beach area and the land behind it with the urban deferred zoning and the possibility of urban zoning in that area, which will also, without a shadow of a doubt, significantly enlarge the area of foreshore land. Because at the very least, we know the railway land, the former railway land, will effectively become foreshore reserve in one form or another. And that is going to be required because we are going to need to move facilities further back. So in the same way that we have the problem with the commercial building immediately to the north, and that we talked about limiting the lease on that so that we could have serious conversations about whether or when does it need to be moved back. We need to have those same conversations about this building. And so I very much felt that 21 years was too much, and that given that the other lease was up for renewal in 5 years, that seemed to be the neatest way of basically addressing that concern about time frame. And then we can sort of look at it all at once. And the reality is that might also give the Surf Life Saving Club the opportunity to start saying, well, if we do need to replace that facility in the foreseeable future, not 21 years down the track or 51 years down the track, if we do need to replace that facility, is it fit for purpose going forward? And I suspect the answer to that will be no. And so that conversation should start in earnest, in 5 years' time or whenever, but not sort of just be put off and accept that, well, that building is going to be there forever and a day. The last thing I would say is if you give someone, we have a responsibility here. If you give someone a lease over a building or a piece of land or whatever, there's an expectation that you can honour that. There's an expectation that you're not planning to do something with that building. And there's certainly an expectation that that if you already know the science that says that that's going to be even more problematic into the future, that you basically design the lease accordingly. And that's why I think it's imperative that we change it to a 5-year lease. I definitely don't want the Surf Life Saving Club to think that we're going to be taking anything away from them. I think what we should be saying to them is we need to start planning for the future, and the future needs to make that entire Port Beach area, including surf life saving activities, significantly better into the future. And that's where I'm heading with this.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson-Wong.
I'll speak briefly because Councillor Sullivan, as usual, said all the things. But I guess I just will reiterate that it's interesting that we find ourselves in a position which is new and that we will be in more frequently of making decisions and needing to factor in the climate crisis and the effects of climate change. And I agree with Councillor Sullivan that the prospects are not good that this building will be there in 21 years, and we should not just close our eyes to that fact. And that's why I support the amendment.
Great, thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you. Yeah, I am one of the people who did raise this as a concern with, giving the club. I would always support the Fremantle Surf Life Saving Club being there. But the coastal erosion is so concerning there. It's quite significant, and even in the last few months, it's been really severe. And it is encroaching quickly on that building. So, if you're going to give 21 years, I'd like to think that we can honour that, and I don't feel that at this point in time we're in a position to do that, and we need to, I agree with Councillor Sullivan, we need to start conversations around what's in the future, how do we keep our clubs and support them, and where do we go from here?
Thank you. Councillor Moughlin.
Thank you. Just a question to officers. So under the circumstances, if we did have a 21-year term and there were, the coastal erosion as we're expecting to occur in that area, what are the implications for a lease? So if that building does become unusable, as an example, how does that sit legally and the like from the lease agreement?
I'll turn that over to the director.
Through the chair, so under the terms of the lease, you could come to mutual agreement with the lessee to address the issue. There's probably nothing in the lease that would commit us to remedying the building itself, but we would probably have to remedy the situation the tenant is in by providing an alternative. But certainly we would hope to work with the tenant to find a suitable alternative location within the bounds of the existing lease.
Any other comment on the proposed amendment? All right, seeing none, we'll put the amendment up for a vote. All those in favor? That's Councillor Slaughter, Mayor Lawver, Councillor Clark, Councillor Sullivan, and Councillor Williamson-Wong. All those against? Councillor Kamado, Councillor Moughlin, and Councillor Van Dorsen. So the amendment is carried. And I'm glad I got that one right. So now we're on to the item as amended. Is there any comment? Any further comment? Seeing none, we'll put the item up for a vote. All those in favor? And that's unanimous, and that's carried. Thank you, everyone. We are now on the Seasonal and Temporary Trading Council policy. That's item 19, and I'll just note in the additional documents online and in our docs on tap, there are 2 proposed amendments for this item, so that's not listed on the run sheet. But they're kind of, sort of similar. They try to get to the same thing. So if someone's moving an amendment, I'd be happy to, if they were going to be merged into one or whatever, that would be just fine by me. But if I could ask for someone to move the seasonal and temporary trading council policy and second it. Moved by Councillor Williamson Wong, seconded by Councillor Van Dorsen. Councillor Williamson Wong, did you wish to open debate?
Thanks. I'm excited to see this come to us. I think it's probably a culmination of a lot of work and conversation since since the policy was introduced, for which I was not here, but sounds like was a fun ride to get us the policy. And I guess also to acknowledge that it has produced some really cool and great outcomes for the city in allowing commercial uses to be in spaces, parks and reserves that wouldn't have had access to those kind of services. So I think that's great. I also think that merging the seasonal and then the temporary trading together is important and useful. And I also wanted to thank staff specifically for the guidelines, because I do think that they're quite user friendly. And if I was a seasonal or a temporary trader, being able to read the guidelines and understand the process, understand locations is really important. And I think that's what's been delivered by separating some of that from the policy and producing it in a way that is easy to read and user-friendly. I'm going to move straight into my amendment, but I will explain before I move it. So I'm flagging that I'll move it. No? Okay, I'll move it.
Do we
I'm
have
gonna
a
move my
seconder
amendment,
for
please.
the amendment, Jemima's amendment?
Oh, this-
Councillor Slaughter. Great.
Oh, yeah.
Now we're on the amendment before us.
That looks like a Councillor Sullivan amendment.
Oh, Councillor Williamson Wong, can we just confirm that that's what you would like to see?
I would like to remove more clearly, because I don't think it's in the guidelines at all. And also, oh yeah, that's fine. Thanks, I'm going to speak to my amendment now. Great. Look, I think a conversation that I've had with the acting CEO in the past is that there are many locations that are not included specifically within the policy that could benefit from being able to be used as a seasonal or temporary trading area, or we as a city would benefit from new locations being added more flexibly. The big example really is in our CBD. There are many locations where there is a vacant building, it's sat there for months, years, etc. And the public realm around it is therefore kind of reduce the feeling. The perfect example is when you walk off a train and you walk past Pioneer Park, what used to be Il Cibo, and you have kind of offices on one side, and you don't really have anything that's activating the streetscape until you get to, Wise Child, Commercial, and again with Kukula Sister. Those locations might benefit from there being able to be a coffee van or a food van, or perhaps a different type of commercial or retail enterprise. And to see that reflected in the policy via the trial locations was really great, I thought, because it allows for that to happen. My brain did not really clock that it had allowed that to happen, because I was too busy reading the guidelines, which felt so snazzy to read that I got distracted. And so this amendment is really requesting that the guidelines reference and include that the trial locations are a possibility for traders, because otherwise they don't know that they exist. And I think that we're missing out on many amazing opportunities if we don't make it clear to people that they could use this as an option. Doesn't mean that all of the places that they say are going to be suitable, and it doesn't mean that we're going to be able to deliver on everything, but it does allow for people to say, oh, I'd actually really like to have a mini bookshop near Il Bruto / Strange Company. How would that sound in a car park? And have it as a kind of parklet type use to face onto a footpath or the like. So that is the reason for this amendment. Well, I thought that the current guidelines don't reference it at all. Well, we don't need to necessarily include the specific wording, so I don't. Yeah, we're just asking that, there's all the nice boxes of locations, and perhaps one could be question mark location. You choose. That's me.
Councillor Williamson, can I ask if you, because the other amendment is getting to the same thing, it's just including any public space in front of existing shops that have been vacant for more than 12 months, but it's putting that in the policy itself. So I guess, and clarifying the guidelines is also important. Would you entertain or consider adding that bit to your amendment as a minor amendment if it's still getting to the same intent that you're hoping to achieve with this?
Well, I support the intent of it. Obviously, that's why have my amendment. I am confused. Well, I have concerns about just including any public space in front of an existing shop if we don't do, I guess, the testing behind a site, and also, I guess.
That's fine. I just wanted to see if that was.
But we're talking about the amendment, so if other elected members have differing views, then obviously we can continue.
Sorry, Councillor Sullivan.
I will support this, but I support it with some caveats, I guess. The idea of trial locations, the idea of additional temporary or seasonal trading areas is always exciting, and it feels very Fremantle to me. But it also, every time we do it, raises the usual sort of issue of, is this going to impact on bricks and mortar retailing? And we must always, have that in our mind as well. So, and I give it as an example, and whether it's this version of the amendment or the next version of the amendment, the idea of saying, well, there's, someone's not leasing their shop front, or they're not leasing a whole building that's impacting on a streetscape. So we're going to put some things in there. And that's sort of fine in principle. The bookshop example, it's probably fine as long as the bookshop isn't competing with the bricks and mortar bookshop around the corner. A lot of these, seasonal and temporary trading kind of activities are simply trying to utilise opportunities to grab the cream of activity, but not pay the bricks and mortar costs of permanent activity. And, that is a real danger. If someone, I think, well, what does the city need? Well, if someone wants to open a flower shop in, the Cappuccino Strip, where I don't think at this stage there is a flower shop, in the Piazza, okay. But just as a hypothetical, then that's great. If there's activities out there that can be trialled and the like, then that's great. The other thing is a lot of the, I know we really dislike the empty shop fronts, etc. But, the reality is you would never be able to do something like this in front of an empty shop front down High Street, I don't think, without it actually having a negative, unintended consequence on the other traders in that area. The same sort of thing is, okay, well, let's put a food kind of market in Pioneer Reserve. Well, is that going to impact on the food court that's just tried to reopen and start trading and the like? So we're always going to have this tension. So yeah, I don't see this as sort of something that's going to suddenly overnight be the great saviour of empty spaces and shop fronts, because it's so hard to get that balance right, and our staff are put under a huge amount of pressure in terms of getting that balance right, because people come along with all sorts of wonderful ideas. We even saw that at the end of South Terrace with and I know doesn't come under this policy, but the three 3 or 4 container pop-ups that really had to do, they don't have to provide toilets, they don't have to provide waste facilities, they don't have to provide any parking. They get to absolutely take the cream out of the activity down at the end of South Terrace in South Fremantle. And I have a suspicion, I can't prove it, that at least one shop over the road didn't actually end up doing what they said they were going to do, because someone basically started a competing operation over the road in a container. That's not good overall for the city. Everyone loves those facilities, but our job is to balance those things out. And so, yeah, good idea, not going to work everywhere. Let's trial it where it can work, and let's make sure we don't get it wrong by having our staff really understand how to implement this. And they already do to a large degree, but this is something new. And so we need to be on top of those unintended consequences.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you. Everything that Councillor Sullivan just said is absolutely correct. But even as a business owner, what I do see the potential in this does excite me. I love this concept. The one key thing is not overlapping with existing bricks and mortar businesses. They do carry all the bills. But what this can offer is an incubator opportunity from a retail perspective for people who want to give it a go. So they could potentially set up, or artists could come in and they can give it a go. And I feel that we've been lacking in this city for a long time, since many closed down, because many that was previously in the Maya building was that opportunity. We haven't had that on the ground, and I feel that containers in strategic places can absolutely do that, but don't do it by putting that container in front of an empty shop in the 2 parking bays that the surrounding businesses need for their customers to use. So it is very much a balancing act, and I think there definitely has to be consideration of what's going in and the ripple effect that would have on the existing businesses. But I'm really excited for this otherwise. It's great.
I'll just say I'm happy to support the amendment as well. It gets to the same place largely, and because they're trial locations, I don't think we have to approve them, or staff has to approve them. I'm pretty confident that our staff can get the job done. They know our city in and out, especially the commercial side. And if for whatever reason the balance gets off, as Councillor Sullivan said, this is a policy. We can always bring it back and change it. So I'll be supporting the amendment as put forward by Councillor Williamson-Wong, and thank you for doing so. Seeing no other discussion on the amendment, we'll put that up for a vote. All those in favor? That's unanimous, carried. Great, now we're on to the item as amended. Is there any further discussion, comment? No, Councillor Williamson-Wong, Councillor Sullivan, you wish to speak to the item?
I just note, I didn't put an amendment in because I think it can be handled at the next phase, but I certainly have had people concerned about the location of the stall at South Beach Dog Beach. They love the activity. They aren't happy with the location because of 2 things. It parks itself in a spot which is right where people who use Acrod Bays to go and view the ocean from their vehicle, because they can't even get out of their vehicle, are saying that it's sort of in their view corridor, and also the generator is right there as well. So whereas everybody else can move away from the van, they can't necessarily. And even if they can get out of their car, it kind of is right where they have to move further away. I have raised that before, and it was said, no, well, it's there because that's where the policy, or that's where they're required to put it by the licence, and so we can't move it. So I will flag that I will be recommending that we do actually shift that slightly, and no doubt some of those people that have contacted me over the last probably 8 months about that. We'll put some comments in. So, the other one was Parmelia Reserve. I can ask a question. Has that ever been used for seasonal trading, or?
I'll give that to the director.
Through the chair, just mobile food vendors, not seasonal trading. So food trucks.
But has it been used?
It has previously been used, yes.
It has.
It's an existing location.
Okay. Well, I just flag it. I mean, I flag it publicly because I think the local community probably should have a, bit of a view about that. It does feel unusual to me as a location because it's very much a local park. I mean, for example, the one in Sampson Park is a great facility, but that's more of a regional park. Having them at South Beach, the same sort of thing. Starting to have them in local parks, maybe not so sure about.
Great. Did you wish to close on the item, Councillor Williamson-Wong?
Just briefly, I'll flag also that I echo Councillor Sullivan's points about the South Beach Dog Beach location and it being moved east if possible. And otherwise, no.
Great. Well, then we'll put the item as amended up for a vote. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Carried. Great. Thank you, everyone. We're now on to item 20, which is the Fremantle Park Caretaker Agreement. Moved by Councillor Kamada, seconded by Councillor Moughlin. Councillor Kamada, did you wish to?
Yeah, I'll be brief. I think the city's done a very good job since taking over within the caretaker arrangement. It's important that this process continues. These are really important clubs for our community. They provide, a service that is immeasurable in what it does for the people of our community. And I look forward to seeing the final recommendations that will be presented in May.
Great, thank you. Any other comment? Councillor Slaughter.
Yeah, I would just like to thank the staff for bringing this back in a timely manner with more detail before the expiration. I know that we couldn't get it all finalised as I had hoped when I first tried to bring this forward, but I'm very pleased with how far we've got and how we've all been kept in the loop. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Seeing no further comment, we'll put that item up for a vote. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Now we're on to our statutory reports and the committee and working group reports. I'm just going to ask, does anyone wish to speak on any of these items? Seeing none, then I would ask that maybe someone moves item 21, 22, 23, and 24 on block, moved by Councillor Sullivan, seconded by Councillor Clark. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. And seeing as we have no motions from previous notices been given, no urgent business, no late items, no confidential business, the meeting is closed at 7:28 p.m. Great work, everyone.